Hexed House, Keswick, Ontario. Sudden and unexpected changes in what one expects to find in a home one has lived in for some time can lead to the assumption that strange forces may be at work. A family in Keswick, Ontario had that discomforting thought in their 50-year-old frame house. They called it an evil spirit and claimed it manifested itself in weird stains and particular bumps and rattles. Keswick is about 80 kilometers north of Toronto on the southern end of Lake Simcoe. The family name was Matthews. As reported in 1963, Mrs. Matthews said the spirit first appeared as a brown stain that looked like a skull and crossbones embedded in the kitchen floor. Another stain on the kitchen cabinet was the image of a woman in a hoop skirt. Later, the cabinet doors spun open of their own accord, and dishes could be heard rattling day and night, almost as if a vibration undetected by the family rumbled through the house. An occasional tapping at the front door was equally puzzling. The family's attempt to get rid of the kitchen floor stain by holding a Bible over it just made the stain appear even brighter the next day. In the end, Mrs. Matthews said she just hoped the spirit would go away. It apparently did. Disturbed graves. British Columbia. Disturbing the dead can produce unforeseen consequences. As a young single mother discovered in Qualitacane, I don't know how to say that. As a young single mother discovered in British Columbia. One night in 1986, she reportedly saw the figure of a monk as she came into the bathroom. She and her 4 children were out of the rented fourplex forthwith. Tenants in the other units said unusual things happened to them too. Television channels switched unexpectedly and beds changed positions. Turns out the paving stones making up the fourplex's front walk were taken from 130 graves at the Woodlands Hospital Cemetery, children's graves. When the owner of the fourplex returned the stones, all was quiet once again. A deadly drive, Fredericton, New Brunswick. The brutal murder of a taxi driver, Norman Philip Bergeon, in January of 1949 sent shockwaves of horror through Fredericton, New Brunswick. Just 34 years old when he was killed, he was married and the father of 3 young children. His wife reported him missing when he didn't return home after answering a Friday night call for a taxi from the Canadian Legion Hall. 3 days later, his body was found stuffed into the trunk of his cab at the southeastern outskirts of the city on Willsey Road. His killers had badly botched their efforts to conceal their crime, leaving behind plenty of clues to their identities, and it took police just a couple of days to find them. Rufus Hamilton, age 22, and his brother, George, 23, were charged with the murder. During the trial, George told the court how Rufus had bludgeoned him with a hammer. Then they had robbed him. The Hamiltons were found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging. Both sentences were carried out on the same day in July of 1949. There are those who believe that the young 2 men, united by their deaths just minutes apart, remain together in the afterlife, and that their ghosts still haunt Fredericton. The Hammer brothers, as they came to be known, have been reported wandering through some of the city's back alleys. They've also been seen thumbing a ride into town, but no one will stop to pick them up, especially not along Willsey Road. The House of Spirits. Cobourg, Ontario. Mackenzie House is a charming home surrounded by lush gardens on the Tremaine Street in Cobourg, Ontario. More than 150 years old, the mansion has been restored to its original elegance and is now a popular bed and breakfast known for serving fine meals. It is also known by some of Cobourg's older residents for having had a few supernatural ghosts. These folks remember hearing the drone of bagpipes when they played in the house as youngsters, and a few actually saw the piper, Natalie, dressed in his kilt and shiny black shoes, standing on the stairs. A little girl also has appeared on the stairs before running away, as if playing hide and seek. Another otherworldly elderly lady seemed to like rearranging or hiding items in the house, and has even tucked a few unsuspecting guests into bed at night. Today, the owners of the bed and breakfast manor don't use stories about McKechnie House being haunted to attract clients to the stately home, and they're quite comfortable living in the house themselves. Though they did sense the presence of ghosts in the beginning, they feel they have moved on. But superstitious guests and active imaginations might want to spend a day or two enjoying more than the scrumptious food and royal treatment that bed and breakfast is known for. They might actually book a room in the hope that they could come away with a ghost story of their own. A Ghost Asks Why, Muskoka, Ontario. Jean first saw a ghost in the 1930s. She was a young child at the time, spending the summer at her grandparents' Riverside Lodge in Muskoka's, Ontario's popular cottage county. Two guests who had just arrived at the lodge were newlyweds. Competitive swimmers, they were honeymooning in the area so they could continue training for the upcoming national trials. The day they decided to go for a swim was like so many other that summer, warm and sunny with just a gentle breeze drifting through the trees. Other guests had warned the couple of dangerous undertow in a turbulent section of the river, but they didn't seem concerned. They strolled down the path hand in hand, waded in the water until it was deep enough, and swam away. Jean was playing outside then. She was still outside some time later when her husband clambered back up the path, gasping for breath and begging for help. People were shouting and running toward him. Jean was frightened. She was also confused. She could see the guests rushing to put boats in the water when the frantic husband told him how his bride had disappeared in a swirling eddy, and his desperate search to find her had failed. But Jean didn't understand because she could also see his wife. The young woman was standing near her husband. She was dripping wet, bent over slightly, and sobbing. And in the midst of all the noise and confusion, Jean could hear her moaning again and again. How could you? But people were still heading for the river to look for her, and gradually it dawned on Jean that no one else could see her. As dusk fell, the search was called off, and guests slowly returned to the lodge, talking in hushed tones about the missing bride. Her body was never found, but Jean saw her several times over the next few weeks, standing on a small island in the river, wet hair plastered around her face and doubled over as if in pain. Each time Jean saw her, she heard her cry out, "Why did he do it? I loved him." Jean was too young at the time to make sense of what she saw that summer, but nearly 50 years later she would recall details of what happened in A Gathering of Ghosts, a book she co-authored with Robin Skelton, in which she described several other times she has seen, heard, or sensed ghostly presences. The drowned bride was the first of many ghosts she would encounter over her lifetime, but memories of her often haunted Jean. Had the young woman's death been just a tragic accident, or something much more sinister, a murder? Jean could never forget hearing her plead, "How could you?" that summer so long ago, nor stop imagining what she could have meant.